Hello, how are you guys doing? What's happening? I hope the camel tea is flowing and the biscuits are crunchy. My name is Fergus Neal. This is the Ferg Neal Show podcast. Today on the show, we have the lovely... Firstly, how are you doing? Are you well? Are you swell? How is life? Are you walking right now? Are you on the train, the tram? Are you on your bike? You're on a tricycle? I don't know what you do. You could be a clown who juggles on his tricycle and listens to this podcast. We'll never know. You'll know. That's kind of the best poetry I've ever done. If you're listening and you want to publish that poetry, visit me at fergusneal.com.au. Today on the show, we have the lovely Courtney Barnett, Grammy Award winner. Firstly, though, I need to touch on something that I think should be addressed. I haven't spoken on it in the last 2 weeks because it's been difficult. Obviously, the Melbourne comedy scene is at the moment it's healing. It's going through something because we had a young woman on the scene who was very, very enigmatic, very inspirational. Her name was Eurydice Dixon. On the Thursday night, I did a gig, getting emotional. She was on after me at a bar in South Melbourne. It wasn't a big room. And then the next time I saw her, she was on the front of The Age with the words murdered and raped next to her. And I think it comes to a question of what kind of society we want to live in. Do we want to live in a society where we see people on a Thursday, we perform comedy with them, and then 4 days later we're sitting in a cafe and they're on the front of a newspaper, and they've been murdered, and just it's kind of shaken the Melbourne comedy scene right now. Obviously, people are coming together. There's been community effort and that kind of thing. I can't claim to know Eurydice amazingly well. She was just another comedian on the scene. She was a young comedian from what I've heard. I've got friends who were very close to her. We performed on the same bill quite a few times. But yeah, I think right now in Australia, there's a crisis among men. The suicide rate is through the roof. The amount of acts of domestic violence, the acts of sexual assault, sexual harassment, and it has to be addressed what is going on in the consciousness of males right now. Because there's something happening that's not... I mean, after Jill Maher was killed walking down Sydney Road at 3 a.m, we said there's going to be difference. There's going to be things that are enacted and things are going to change. But it seems as though this is happening most weeks, most fortnights. I think there's something in the news about someone's being killed by a man, and obviously that's taking I'm going to have a level of privilege in talking about this because I'm a man, and I've been given this platform of having the podcast, and this is quite a heavy way to start the podcast, but I do think it has to be something that's discussed because I think it struck more close to me in that sense. It kind of woke me up in a weird way because where Eurydice was attacked was in Princess Park after a gig. And I walk through Princess Park after every gig because that's my way to get to a tram line. So when I heard about this particular attack, and it was someone I knew, and who was doing the exact same thing that I'd done the previous night, and the previous week, I'd done the exact same gig and walked back home the exact same way, but I wasn't attacked because I'm a man and I have that level of privilege that shouldn't be granted to me just because the way I was born biologically. And I'm thinking, like, does every man have to have this happen? Does every man have to have a sister, a mother, a friend, a girlfriend, a partner, anybody who goes through this in order to be woken up to what women face out there? And I think I've definitely been blind to it, and I have to take responsibility for that. I don't, as I said, I don't claim to know Eurydice super well, but I do claim to know the culture that's resulted in this kind of violence and just a rupture in the masculine consciousness that's occurring right now. I think it's important if you're with friends, and I know we have a lot of young men who listen to this podcast between 18 and 35. That's the statistics we get through Libsyn, which is a podcast server. All I can say to you is if you hear friends adding to this culture that we live in of misogyny and it being normalized, sexual harassment, rape, you need to stand up to that, because you don't know if your silence will lead to someone being killed or harassed on their way home from a comedy gig. And I think it'll get to a point eventually where once people do start speaking about this, because it is tough to speak. I don't get joy in speaking about these things. It's super heavy and super upsetting. And I was very, very down after that event took place, and so was sort of friends I have in the comedy community, and obviously we can only imagine what her family is going through. But this is happening weekly, fortnightly, monthly, and I think it has to stop. So I think if you hear something that pricks your ear, I know it can sometimes be embarrassing. I used to think that. I said, I'm not going to say something because this will be embarrassing. But it can even just be not laughing at someone who makes a rape joke or a sexual harassment joke. It sounds weird, but it's a really powerful thing just to not acknowledge what that person is trying to do, which is trying to make you laugh through the normalizing of this fucked up behavior. Address it, call it out, and then, I mean, we can only give voice to people like Clementine Ford, who we've had on this podcast. She's written some terrific articles. I feel that's what we can do. We need strong women in media who give voice to these things that a lot of men don't know is going on. Three of my friends have told me when they walk home they carry car keys between their fists in case someone attacks them. Which is just, I've never felt unsafe walking home. And yeah, I mean, I don't really know how to go from here to there. I guess today on the show, we have an amazingly strong, inspiring woman, Courtney Barnett, whose music and I guess art is super captivating, and it kind of gives you that reason to live. Because I think when things like this happen, we always wonder, well, when such sick, horrific crimes like this happen in society, what is it that keeps us going? What is it that kind of gives us light? I remember at the vigil for Eurydice Dixon, it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. There's 5,000 people in Princess Park together. No one was in their phones. Everybody had their heads down in silence, holding candles. And there was a sense of community, togetherness that perhaps isn't in society right now. And it's kind of made me think, I mean, you would have seen it when you're on a train and a tram, everyone's on their phones. There's no connection. There's a kind of weird isolation of individualism that gets completely, I mean, that definitely contributes to why there's so much loneliness in society. But I think I found that moment was incredibly moving, standing with 5,000 people and acknowledging that this is a life that was lost because of the culture that is still there and needs to be tackled effectively. Today on the show, I talk with Courtney Barnett about success. Courtney discusses how success has affected her, what she has, what she's achieved with success. Obviously, it's given her a platform to speak about issues she's passionate about. And I think is one of the most loveliest people we've ever had on the show. I gave her a pot plant because my father was a gardener and he loves Courtney Barnett's song Avant Gardener. He said, give her a pot plant. Let's. Okay. So I mean, I did have to ride my bike along the upfield bike path with the pot plant in hand. I got some double looks, some weird head nods, but that happens, doesn't it? I mean, you got to look for the light in life. You got to keep on keeping on. Yeah, Courtney Barnett, everyone. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll get a lot out of it. My name is Fergus Neal, and this is the Ferg Neal Show.
Well, there's some people you ought to know. Don't worry, because he will say hello for you. Here we go. It's the Ferg Neal Show.
So I'm also curious, like the success that you've had with the music you produced. When did that belief start coming into it? Like, when was it? Does it feel weird to talk about having that success, or is it like, especially for your family and that kind of thing? Like, did it kind of change how you interact with people, or did it kind of have any of those ripples towards the rest of your life?
It's kind of hard to tell because I think I don't know, we grow as people as time goes on, and then these other things happen, and you don't know what's the cause of what. And,
yeah.
But I mean, I think everything affects everything else in some way. I don't 100% know how.
Yeah. But so moving to Melbourne when you were 20, at that stage, so you were starting to do open mics, and what was the progression in that sense? Like, so went from doing open mics to when was the realization that I'm going to start releasing some EPs, and then?
Oh yeah, I think it was probably a couple years later, like maybe 23.
Okay.
I think I recorded my first EP, but yeah, until then I just would go through all the beat magazines and find every venue that had an email address. Just like email them.
Yeah.
And probably not with much tact or success actually.
Yeah, okay.
But I would just try to get a gig anywhere.
Yeah.
And play, and I did just play anywhere and everywhere to no one and a couple of people, and so yeah, I don't really know how it started. It somehow started to change. I met my manager actually, and he probably was a huge part in that whole change.
Yeah, it's interesting because it must be, especially if you're looking back retrospectively, like little lefts, little rights that kind of took you in the right direction along the stream. When was the first point when did you start introducing, I know musicians, it's like a big thing for them when their family and friends start watching, because that's a big step, because it's probably the people you're most vulnerable with.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Like what do your parents, are they musically inclined or?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not so musical, but they're kind of artistic in their own way. Like, Mum used to be in the Australian ballet, traveling around the world, and Dad was a graphic designer and kind of worked for the ballet in other, like, behind the scenes and stuff.
So they met through ballet?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Did you ever have interest, like, from a young age? Were they ever like, we're going to usher you into the ballet?
I did ballet for a little bit when I was young, I really stood out.
Can you still do ballet?
It was really fun. No, I mean, I was probably never very good, but it was a lot of fun. I liked it.
Yeah. But that dancing hasn't carried through to today, or has it?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I like dancing every now and then.
Yeah. And it come into surely being on stage and that early performative experiences. And maybe it's a bit in your blood, like DNA, to be on stage. Maybe. I think maybe, like, who knows? We'll never know. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the first shows. I mean, those early open mic nights, I used to get my friends, or my friends would come along and be supportive, and we'd kind of watch each other's shows, and I'm sure Mum and Dad came to a couple of them because that was in Hobart, and then I moved to Melbourne, so they probably didn't see me play for a long time, except for when we went back to Hobart, and but yeah, they've always been really supportive.
What do you think you would be doing now if the success didn't come? Like, would you have just been still doing smaller gigs in Melbourne, or what do you reckon your trajectory might have been?
Yeah, it's so hard to say. I was I probably would just still be kind of, writing music and recording it and playing around, and and then do you see at all happiness being linked with your success? Like, do you see like I remember we talked to Arj Barker about this, and he said that his happiness almost, it almost plateaued. And then when he gained success, he said it didn't make me any happier. It just kind of changed me as a person sense. Whereas a lot of people kind of perceive that you will become happier once you have success in that sense. Yeah, I think it's pretty, I've never really thought that, and I don't think it now. I don't think that that's something that kind of external can bring a higher, I mean, it's levels of happiness, but not like the deep happy that comes from somewhere else. Because it's interesting, sometimes performers, and like I've talked to comedians and musicians about this before, it's like the drive for that external validation is through trying to have that happiness, and then often once people reach that, it's like kind of the class at the 27 Club, and people reach it, they realize, it's not fulfilling me, this external drive. How did you manage to stay grounded when all these external factors started coming in, like people like, we're going to put you on Saturday Night Live, we're going to put you on the Tonight Show? Were you kind of like I imagine that must have been overwhelming in the sense from
from where you were pouring beers at the Northcote Social to
I think I don't know, maybe just not kind of ever. I don't think I ever really expected those things, or that they would that it would bring any sort of other level of
that's interesting
something. So maybe it I couldn't be let down by something I never believed in the first place.
I'm so curious by because we've had and even like Peter Singer said that, like, because obviously he's like a very like internationally renowned philosopher, like ranked third, like world's third most influential thinker, and he's like, well, Ferg, when I was ranked number 3, it's not like my happiness just skyrocketed. Like it's just kind of a little bump in the road that you kind of see, and sure, it might make you a little bit self-assured, but it's not really gonna add to that internal rhythm of self, I guess.
It's a weird it's an interesting like conversation, and one that I have a lot with friends and just people in general, because it's it's like this recurring thing that we all kind of assume or make up this kind of weird story about, which no one actually believes in, but
sure. Well, I guess as well because if I guess your friends would have been interesting for you from your perspective, because like if stuff happened with your friends, were you ever kind of thinking like why did I have this success? And like I'm sure you got friends who are musical who didn't have that success. You know, like comedians have spoken about, like Mark Moran said when some of his friends got success, oh man, like why isn't that me type thing. Like how did you balance that? Was it just kind of like it wasn't even a factor in play?
Oh yeah, I think about that stuff all the time. Well, it doesn't really make sense. But how can you? There's no point even thinking about it. In circles. The current album that's just been released. Can you talk about that and how it kind of differs from your previous album and EPs, and I guess the thought process behind it, and I guess what parts of your life went into it? It's kind of hard to find a like point of difference being so close to it. I think I definitely kind of had a lot more focus on it. I feel like some of the other songs were kind of written around a bigger kind of, or like in spare time, or I don't know, just this one felt like I kind of sat down and tried to focus really hard on writing, and I didn't really know, I didn't really have like themes, or I didn't really know what I was doing or what I was saying. I kind of I felt like I had so much to say but also nothing to say at the same time, so it was really conflicting and hard to kind of to get ideas across to myself. And so I just, instead of kind of setting guidelines, I just wrote a lot and then kind of went back and edited and tried to find a through line or like, you know, recurring ideas and thoughts. And it was all, I just noticed that it was also kind of self-reflective and very internal, and a whole lot of kind of trying to figure out what's going on. So I mean, it felt glued together.
Were you shocked with like the Melbourne references that pop up in your music, that they have gained so much resonance with international listeners? Like I know some of your songs were on like Barack Obama's, you know what I mean, playlist and that kind of thing. But some of the references are so iconically Melbourne. Or do you think that's kind of, people aren't really as much looking for the references as much, like the rhythm of the song and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's always nice to kind of hear and connect with references that you can that you do like have that kind of proximity to. But I think if you think of the history of music, like we don't, like, it doesn't matter. Like we still listen to Lou Reed songs. You know, he's talking about little corners in New York or something. It doesn't mean that we turn it off.
I don't get the reference, so this is turning off right now, right? Can you please clarify that?
Because we connect with the other, you know, that's like one small element of the songs, kind of setting the environment and the location. But I think that the emotional layers are kind of deeper, and they're the universal layer, you know. I mean, something like Elevator Operator, which I think was that Obama song, I mean, it's set on Swanston Street in Melbourne, but it's the stuff that's going on is so universal.
Yeah, I'm reading Bob Dylan's Chronicles right now, which is a really interesting book that I picked up when I was in America, and I was reading on the Amtrak from all the way down the Californian coast, and he was talking about early on when he was writing songs, and there's been comparisons between you and Dylan, like your lyricism, and he said at the start people weren't really getting it, they weren't connecting to it. It was like at the start people kind of really into it, they were really drawn back. And then he said that there was one gig, I think it was at Cafe Wah, where he said it was the first time he realized that he had everyone in the room captivated with what he was saying.
Yeah.
Like, was there a similar time? I remember seeing a video from a launch party of one of your albums, and it wasn't as huge as it is now. Obviously that album started and then like gained huge wheels of its own. But was there a point when you thought, even maybe writing the songs, performing the songs, where you thought, I think this is really going to captivate with a lot of people? That was a four multifaceted question.
It's a good question. No, I don't. I mean, I don't think that I've ever really thought it's a funny kind of balance of me being really insecure, but still hope, like doing it in some kind of blind hope that people will connect. Well, I don't really even know why I do it, but surely it's for some reason. Yeah,
okay, yeah. But so the insecurity, has that always been there, and even with the success, like, did you think that was like that hasn't at all subsided?
No, I think it feels like it's kind of always stayed the same.
Okay.
And so it's this, and then it becomes a funny, like comparison of well, I guess of wondering if one thing kind of fuels the other or not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because it comes back to that thing, like I guess in early music that I've listened to and that kind of thing, and I've on interviews with you, it does seem like you have a certain level of insecurity, and then obviously with the success and the validation of people saying, well, this is what you're doing amazing, and then it's kind of, but then in the current album you can also hear some insecurity, which is, I guess, from people from outside, it seems weird, because often like you'll see some rock bands and the second album, they're often maybe a little bit too arrogant, you know what I mean? Like they've kind of had a killer first one and the second one isn't. But then this one is still very gentle and very like you can connect with it and that kind of thing. When you write, I can't remember the line where you talk about prose. I was listening to on my bike on the way here. I was riding my bike down the uphill bike line with this plant in my hand. It was the most Melbourne thing I've ever done in my life. And people are like, why is he holding a plant on the way down? Yeah, I can't remember the one in prose.
City looks pretty. Heavenly prose ain't enough good to fill that hole.
Yeah, I love that line. Like when you write something like that, do you think, oh, cool, this is going to grab people? This is what's going to...
I don't know. Okay. It's really hard to think like that because... I just never, I mean, I've never even heard someone mention that line. Okay. So there you go.
You're weird. Yeah.
No, but I mean, that's huge to me because I, and sometimes I can't even explain properly what a line, like what it means, but I know what it means. And I love that line. Yeah. But I don't even know how to.
Or where the thoughts come from.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I have that as well when I'm writing, like if I'm doing stand-up or writing a joke or writing a script for something, even for shows that I've written for. Like it's weird when a line comes in, it's almost like you have a weird heart like thing where it jumps and you know it's right, but you don't really know why that's right. But then you can also tell, like I'm sure you'd have lyrics that come in and you're like, oh, this isn't going to work at all. Like, why am I talking about that type thing? Yeah. And I'm really curious, like from the artistic point of view, like I think we'll probably never know because it's like a question of like, well, does the self exist? If not, where are these thoughts coming from? That kind of comes into your consciousness and sways your sound and your music. And I guess like looking forward, like what point are you at now? Like I know you're touring the album, but you kind of looking, what do you see in the next 5 years type thing for where your music will go?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I've been writing so much lately. And, I mean, I never really know. Even when I was writing this album, I didn't know where it was going.
Yeah, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's part of the the kind of strain and the joy of writing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not too sure.
Would you ever do like a similar thing what Bob Dylan's done and go into another discipline like write a chronicles book type thing? Or is that something you'd be interested in, like moving from writing songs to being a prose writer and writing that in the form of a book or something?
Yeah, I've always been open to that, and I've always done lots of other like dabbled in lots of stuff, but just not publicly.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
but I don't know, lots of kind of visual stuff I've kind of always worked on. I think it's just the right thing kind of I think it just somehow makes it clear, you know, what needs to be done at what time, and I'm sure there'll be a point where I'd get sick of music for a year and have to do something else.
Well, it's like David Bowie had an art collection that he never showed anyone while he was alive because he didn't want. I guess it's interesting because he had an insecurity, he said as well, with the extension from his music to his art. And like one of my favourite comedians, Noel Fielding, he's a really great visual artist and a great performer.
Yeah.
Do you have influences kind of outside of your music that you use or that fill into you, or do you have friends outside of a music discipline that will kind of come and like shape what you write in your music?
Yeah, I think my influences have always been much further than music.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And I've kind of grown up with a lot of a lot of kind of more kind of literature, more visual, like lots of visual art and even stuff like dance when I was young.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the first, I didn't go to like big rock concert, like my parents never took me to like some cool
Coachella
rock concert that other people's family did. Like we went to the ballet like a handful of times and you know, it was really exciting and it was but it was just, you know, a different experience. And I mean, some people don't go to the ballet or like rock shows or whatever. And they dragged us to art galleries and you know, it really kind of was this quite amazing, kind experience, and you know, I think it really kind of, and then I kind of continued on in my own kind of way, and but I've never. There's some points where I don't even listen to that much music anyway. I think I just kind of have always gained inspiration from the world around, like people around me. Weird people and friends and just stuff going on.
So with like Elevator Operator, like obviously that follows a character's journey, and like in that sense, did you see someone walking down the street and you thought, I'm going to turn this into a song, or how does that?
No, it was a friend.
Okay.
A friend story.
Okay.
Yeah, which I kind of elaborated.
Yeah. It's a story of my life. Yeah. I remember when Depressing came out, because I've grown up in Coburg and lived in Coburg, and my dad really loved that song until he found out that it was about Coburg, like searching for a house in Coburg.
I think it was. I mean, I can't even remember now, but I know I've told that story. I mean, I think, that's right. We were looking at houses, and then I wrote the song, and then I realized the house I was writing about was this other one. But really, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
It's in, because now, like in Coburg, there's so many coffee shops now. From even when you're written it, like probably the song, the song would look different now.
Yeah,
which is weird. I think we've kind of covered, like nearly half an hour. I got because my dad was a gardener before he became a philosophy teacher, so he loved your song Avant Gardener. So do you want this? I don't know what this plant is. We just have it's this little indoor.
It's very pink.
Will you be able to take that? I don't know if you guys got to go elsewhere today.
No, I'm going to my warehouse, and this will be perfect for my desk.
Yeah, it's going to give ambience to the.
Yeah.
So even the name on it is odd.
Spectacular tropical plants with colourful flowers.
I think it could be from because my mum and dad they met at Ceres and they got married at Ceres and they still volunteer there. So I think that's from one of the plants. I love
Ceres.
The plant. Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? Yeah.
Thanks.
That's all right. Thanks so much for coming in. Is there anything? Have you got shows? What's happening over the next month?
Well, we're going to America, and then we come back and we do an Australian tour in August, September.
Cool.
So we're playing Melbourne 1st of September.
Yeah, cool. We'll put the link in the show details as well. Courtney Barnett, thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Next time on the podcast, I believe we have Mr. Will Anderson coming in, which will be lovely. So to all listeners, have a lovely day. Buy plants for your friends and stay lovely. Lovely. Cool.
Thanks,
guys. Thank you.
That's so cool.
Well, there's some people you ought to know. Don't worry because he will say hello for you. Yeah.